What is going on, everybody? Taylor here, and I am joined by my favorite co-host in the entire world.
Only at the moment.
Would you prefer only or favorite?
Favorites, okay.
This is Jacob, and he is back with me again today.
Hi, everyone.
We have so many movies to talk about today.
So many movies.
Over the past probably month or so,
Yeah.
we've seen a lot. We've been trying to play catch up as well as keeping on top of what's being released in theaters so that we can get all of our end of the year lists all sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a lot of things.
Oh, it's been a lot. We have basically watched a movie every night.
Pretty much. At least one.
Yeah, at least one. Sometimes we've knocked out two. It's been interesting.
Yeah.
We've gotten through it.
We have. And I've only been able to get out so many review videos myself over the past couple weeks just because with Christmas and everything else going on this time of year, it's just been a little bit crazy. So we're going to sit down right now and just talk about a whole bunch of them. We have a whole list that we're just going to talk about, see what we get through. And we might even have to do another episode because there's just so much.
Maybe.
But let's kick this off with a movie that you and I have both really wanted to talk about for about a month now. Because we saw it early, really early.
Yeah, we were lucky enough.
And we went to a screening and it was incredible. But we just haven't had time to sit down and talk about it. And we didn't want to be rushed when we did talk about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
This is easily the best animated film of the year.
Easily.
At the moment, I'm giving it best superhero film of the year.
Okay.
However, I'm still in flux between this, Avengers, and Black Panther. The three of them are kind of swapping and changing on a daily basis, basically, on how much I think about them.
And I get that because they all three have something very different to offer in terms of the superhero world, and all three of them are fantastically crafted.
Yes.
But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a movie that I've been very excited about since the trailers started dropping. They did a really amazing panel at San Diego Comic-Con this last year where we got to see a bunch of the unfinished animated footage. They showed us a whole sequence that they were still in the middle of animating, which was pretty cool considering all of the animation that went into this movie and the technology that they had to use to do it. And you can really just tell that so much passion went into this movie, pretty much from every department, every person that worked on it. Where would you like to start with this movie?
Straight up, I just want to start with how it was able to take a very complex idea in the multiverse and just finding a way to be able to tell a human and emotional story while having this big, giant, grand idea of a multiverse going on at the same time where there are six different Spider-Man all at the same time, and you never feel lost, you never feel confused. The entire time it's it feels very simplistic, but it's really not, and it's a credit to the filmmakers in how well they're able to showcase this film and showcase this world without being overcomplicated. And we've seen films where they have a complex narrative not being able to tell it because they haven't been able to streamline it. Here, I thought they found a way to really streamline it really simply and easily. Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that not only were they able to make something very, very complicated seem like it was easy to accomplish in giving all of these characters time for us to feel like we've spent time with them and kind of understand why they're there and the universes that they come from. And I think they did a very clever job of kind of doing the wink, wink, nudge, nudge of having to retell the origin story every time a character pops up. Yeah. And they just do it with so much humor, but it also works where it's not like you don't get that fatigue of having the origin story pop up again and again and again. Well, they turned what could be seen as a weakness into a strength.
Right, absolutely. They utilized it so well in this movie with all of the characters that we see. And I think that they did a really great job of also showing how different people can take up this mantle of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Spider-Pig, whatever it is. And and just have their own personalities, their own stories, come from completely different backgrounds, come from different universes, and really drive home that anyone can be that hero. And I think that's such a great message of this movie that it does so well.
Yeah, and what I also loved about this was there were moments in this film where they could have very easily gone the cliched route. And there's this particular moment where they made these characters 3D human beings, and I never felt like, oh, come on, that you wouldn't act like that. At all times, the characters acted like humans, and they were, and there's a particular moment in the third act that I won't spoil, but when it happened, I was taken aback because I was shocked that the film actually willingly went there, and I was very glad it did, and I was very glad that they didn't try and go a cliched route and try and vilify someone. They actually made them a 3D human character who has just fallen on hard times. And I thought that was an incredibly well-made decision and a very human way to do this film.
Absolutely. And I think that this movie was very good at continually surprising the audience with the decisions that it does make. But one thing I do want to really actually highlight is the animation in this movie is incredible. The entire team that worked on making this animation come to life is just, it blows my mind because it feels like you're inside of a comic book, the way that they accomplished it. It's insane. It's insane.
This is some of the best animation I've ever seen. Some of the definitely most unique animation I've ever seen. Other than like walking out of, something like, I don't know when the last time I've walked out of an animated film going, that was so unique and so different. Other than maybe a Miyazaki film. This is the first time I've ever felt watching a Miyazaki film in America, like from an American studio. I've never felt that before until this time, and where they just embrace the weird and they go with it, and they trust that the audience is willing to go on that journey with them, and for the most part, I think we are. There's a few little moments that I think don't quite work. I do think that Miles is a moment where he goes from being in the third act kickoff, basically, where he suddenly is the superhero. I thought was a little too contrived. I thought that happened a little too easily. I get that is superhero films.
Yeah. See, that's where you and I completely disagree on this movie, is I think that that's something that you just have to give to superhero movies personally.
Yeah, I know. But then there are other films where it becomes a little, it feels more natural. I mean, our favorite MCU movie, First Avenger. Yeah, but it shows him progression. It shows his progression.
Yeah, but once again, I think that's something they might have had to sacrifice a little bit in terms of streamlining the story so well that they did with all these other characters.
And I understand that.
But yeah, I understand what you mean, but I think to me it just kind of wasn't something I even really paid attention to because it is just kind of the superhero way.
That's fair.
But I also really think that this movie does a fantastic job of showing us the characterizations. Like when we were looking at Peter Parker, you knew that it was Peter Parker that was talking. And I don't know, it just felt like the perfect embodiment of the comic book humor that you get in Spider-Man comics. And I also thought that there was a lot of heart in the movie too. There was a great relationship you see with his family, whether it's going well or it's not going well, but you really get to see the heart of that, which I think was done so well. And we don't want to spoil anything in this movie for you guys if you haven't seen it yet, but I promise you're not ready for the Stan Lee cameo.
No.
We didn't realize that there would be one. Somehow we just didn't think about it, and then it hit and we were completely unprepared for it.
No.
It is the perfect Stan Lee cameo for a Spider-Man property.
If this was his final ever cameo, I would be more than happy, and part of me wishes they kind of cut the other three now. Kind of hoping they go, nah, that's it. That's done.
That's perfect as his last one, but we're just gonna warn you about that one because it's perfect.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely perfect.
So we're gonna move on because we have a lot to get to still. So the next one we're gonna talk about is a movie that I've already talked about, but I want you to talk about it too.
Yeah.
Bumblebee, which is another movie we saw early, and it was a really, really cool screening that we got to go to. But what are your thoughts on Bumblebee?
Look, Bumblebee I thought is definitely the first Transformers film. Like, okay, last year, I called The Last Night the worst movie of 2017, but also possibly the worst movie that I've seen all decade. I still stand by that because that movie is horrendous and awful and terrible, and it was hard to sit through. And I still stand by that review. But I also, in that review, promised that I would never see another one of these films. And then that bloody trailer dropped, and I instantly knew I had to see this film. And while I don't think this is by any means a perfect film, while I don't think this is by any means going to be nominated for Academy Awards or is the, shining light that the Transformers films needed, I do think it is the film that the Transformers films needed because it is a good film. It tells a very human story that is really sweet, and it focuses on character, which was the most important part of this film. I'm glad that they recognized that character is where we need to go.
Yeah.
We can't, that the action and the set pieces and the explosions and over the top stuff, we can't get away with that anymore. That's not what audiences want. And I think audiences over the last 10 years have actually shown studios that CGI action films aren't what audiences want anymore.
Not just. You can't really get away with having that just be the basis of your film or being the reason to make your film. Yeah. Because at this point, I think audiences are a little bit over being fed that when, I don't really like it when studios are putting out movies where it treats the audience like they're dumb, because that happens a lot of the time where we get properties that treat audiences like they don't want something intriguing that makes them think about stuff or it really takes you on a journey that you have to be present for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of audiences are over that, where they want the cool action, but they also want characters on screen that they can care about and a story that makes them feel literally anything at all, where it's not just a 2.5 hour CGI music video explosion. Yeah. Cool guys walk away from explosions kind of movie.
And that's what I think this film did well. I heard a great analogy for it on Twitter the other day. This is very much the Batman Begins.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Last Night was Transformers, Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
It was awful. Yeah. It nearly destroyed the franchise. This is the next film that is the reboot. If that's what this is, and it's the
getting themselves back on track.
We're back on track. Yeah. All right. And box office wise, it performs like that. Because you got to remember, Batman Begins was not a big hit.
No.
It was a pretty modest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn near close to being a flop. If that's what we're looking at for this film, I can be okay with that, provided that the next film is more in line with this.
And I do think that's what it is. I kind of think that they looked at it and needed a new stepping off point where they looked at what they had and said, we can't just keep going the way that we're going. And I think that they achieved probably close to what they were hoping to, because even though they very clearly sacrificed a lot of the action in this movie, because the action sequences in this movie aren't anything special. They're very baseline. They're very, just stripped back. It's not anything we haven't seen before. It's not anything special, but it gave the movie a little more breathing room to set up these new characters that are believable as people. You see them and you understand what their struggle is, and you understand what their motivations are, and you actually care what happens to them and what their story is. And I really actually liked the tone of the movie a lot as well.
Yeah, I did too. I thought tonally this was the right direction. Now, there are massive problems that I have in this film.
There are massive issues.
And there are problems that I think are forgivable once, in terms of like of how bad you were. If this is the stepping stone, all right, I can forgive that. I can forgive these problems. John Cena, not a good villain. Just straight up, not a good villain. The action, like you mentioned, not very original or engaging. The story, pretty basic. Like there is a lot of problems that I did have with the film, but at the heart of it, I loved Haley Steinfeld. I loved Bumblebee. And I loved their relationship. And to me, that was enough this time. But you cannot rest on your laurels for the sequel.
Well, because then you'll have what happened last time happen here, but instead of it being not bad CGI, but great CGI and a bad story, you're going to have mediocre story and mediocre, and it's just going to have the same
mediocre film.
So I get what you mean, and I think that as long as they use this to really build off of, then we're going in a good direction.
Don't get me wrong, I love the direction we're going. I'm so happy that they decided that this is the direction we want. I just hope they have the conviction and the guts to stay in this direction.
Oh, absolutely.
That they don't decide, well, you know, this one made $20 million opening weekend. Like, that's the last Transformers movie made 70. So
I hope they look at it as, we understand that we're starting over and we're going to kind of have to win back audiences to start seeing these again.
I'm hoping that this is a movie that has legs. That this isn't. I hope so too. That, you know,
people talk about it.
Next week drops to say 19, 18 million. Like it doesn't drop a lot. It just kind of stays
where it's at.
It doesn't go anywhere for a couple of weeks. I'm a little worried. I don't know if that will happen, but I'm hoping. I'm really hoping.
I guess we'll just have to see what happens. So I'm going to let you start this next movie. Well, these next two I'm going to let you start because I almost murdered him for making me see both of them. Yes. So you get to do the honors.
All right. So part one of the two films that nearly got me single and Taylor leaving on a plane. We saw The Grinch. It's not good. It's straight up not good.
That's a very nice way to review the movie.
I have no idea what they were thinking with this one. It made no sense. It was extremely dumbed down, like to a point where it wasn't entertaining. It was it was just, there's demeaning your audiences, and then there's this. Like, it just it really talked down to your audience, as like, it treated you like children, very young children, and said, well, this is what you like, and that's all we're going to give you. And then and it never tried to aspire to be anything else, but then at the same time, it never tried to be the Grinch.
No.
And that's what annoyed me the most about this, because I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was, you know what?
He wasn't bad.
He wasn't bad.
No.
Like, his voice was, I
didn't have a problem with it.
No, I wouldn't have known it was Benedict Cumberbatch if anyone had told me. Like, I couldn't really pick it up. It took me a bit to actually pick up his voice.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to know that it's
exactly.
him.
No. And so he wasn't distracting. However, he was nice. Well, he was a jerk. Like, he wasn't like, you know,
mean. The song, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch."
He wasn't.
It goes on to tell you literally about how much of a scumbag he is, where it compares him to an eel, and you don't want to touch him with a 20-foot pole. And like, this Grinch was like, maybe if you bake him some cookies, he'll be nice to you.
It was kind of one of those, like, you know, he's our annoying neighbor.
Yeah, like your grouchy neighbor that just you know, is in a bad mood.
Yeah, it's like, he's over there. Who cares? Like,
it's not the kind of story you tell your kids to scare them at night.
No,
it's like, oh, old man Jenkins lives up don't go up his driveway and you're fine.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Like, just stay away from, just kind of stay away. You don't fear the Grinch.
No, and you don't, you know, you don't get that chilling feeling of, ooh, he's awful. Like,
yeah, and you don't. So when they do the redemption of the Grinch, which, hey, spoilers for a third remake of a 40-year-old book, when they do the redemption of the Grinch, it feels hollow because you're just like, he's just a jerk. Like,
well, and the thing is, like, when the redemption happens, which I don't care if I spoil any of this for you guys because I promise it's not worth it. When the redemption happens, he's more like someone with anxiety that's afraid of new people, which I personally understand very well, and less like he's, you know, less like he doesn't understand how to be good and he's working that out. It's more like he's just nervous because he's, you know, anxious about new people. Like, it's just not, it's just off.
It didn't feel like the Grinch, like, at all. It never felt like this is the Grinch that that we grew up reading about.
And it's not, and also it just, I don't know, it just, I was bored. There were so many times I would look at my watch or my phone and just be like, do we have to stay here? I don't want to do this anymore. And the other thing that annoyed me the most, and he laughs at me, but it's one of the most annoying things about this whole movie, is they try to turn it into a rap album or a rap music video, and it drives me insane. Like, nothing against rap, honestly. There's a lot of it that I actually do enjoy, but like, you don't do that in this movie the way that they did. Like, it just didn't work for the tone of the movie. No, if it would have been a different tone, like, that song would have been fine.
They were trying to go on they were trying to modernize the Grinch, but then still keep the whimsical and
which you can't really do both.
And it didn't work.
That's what I mean. Like, that's why I was annoyed, because it didn't fit the tone. Like, it wasn't something where you're like, ooh, I get where they're going with this, and this is an interesting. It was just like thrown in where you're oh, this is like grandpa trying to do the cool kid like thing, and it's just not.
It just didn't work for me.
It was just so bad. It was as bad as I thought it was going to be. If any of you guys follow me on Stardust and you saw my original reaction to the trailer, we were at Pat and Sarah's house because we, you know, just take over their apartment whenever we want to. We were there and we all sat down and watched it, and we just posted our reaction on Stardust where we were just like, why did someone do that? Send help. So that was, so don't go see that if you haven't already, please and thank you. Yeah. It's making enough money and it needs to stop.
Yep.
What is the other one that almost got you murdered, Jacob?
So the other one was Disney's box office disaster, The Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them the background
behind this movie's horrific. You can tell them the background about it all, but this movie is horrific.
No, it is. It's freaking awful. Yeah. Like, it is garbage. But so when Jacob came to visit me over in the States, we went to Disneyland. We had a wonderful time at Disneyland. It was like towards probably mid-afternoon, late afternoon in the day. We were walking around, and they have this thing in California Adventure they did where you could go inside, sit in a nice air-conditioned room, but what you had to suffer through to get this relaxation break was you had to sit through like 15 minutes of Nutcracker footage.
Yeah.
And they basically showed us pretty much the entire opening sequence, like give or take a little bit. They cut a little bit out of it. But we watched it and we were like, this makes me want to see this even less. Like, it was just so bad. The footage was just like, I don't know why they were doing that if they wanted to try and get people to see it, because that was awful.
No, it wasn't good at all. And it was basically the entire first act, and it did nothing to sell the movie.
Well, not only that, but the entire first act doesn't really do much to set up the movie either.
No.
Like, it doesn't really give you anything in terms of like why you should care about what's going on.
Kind of one of those weird ones where they kind of do it's kind of like Narnia, where the first act sets up who the characters are and who they are.
But you still don't really learn who they are.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know who she was.
And this movie cost way too much money to make.
There's a Ponzi scheme in this somewhere.
There has to be. Even with firing their director and getting a new one and having to refilm a lot of stuff, they only use like 4 sets for this entire movie. And there's 4 realms, and you only see 3 of them.
Yeah, you don't see 3 of them because one's been destroyed.
Yeah, or something like that. So there's that. None of them are particularly interesting, which is garbage because a Nutcracker-based movie should be very extravagant.
Yeah.
Her dress, the main character's dress, looks like she got it at a department store. Like, it just angers me. The best part of this movie was the actual ballet that they do.
The funny thing is, literally in about halfway through the film, they actually do about 5 minutes. They dedicate
probably
5
about
minutes.
10.
Yeah, it's a long time of the film to the ballet where they just do it. They just do the ballet.
And they use that to tell Clara, the main character, the story of what happened in the realms.
Yeah.
And which is basically the Nutcracker story. And that's the best part of the whole movie.
And we're sitting there going,
why didn't you just do this? I would want to sit here and watch this. Like, this is great. And then they go back and, first of all, Mackenzie Foy in this movie is not great.
No.
Not great.
Not at all.
Which I don't know if I should blame on the script or...
A bit of column A,
probably. So she's not great, which doesn't help the movie because she needs to be the one to carry it, and she just really doesn't. Keira Knightley is just awful.
She makes this choice very early in the film that I don't quite understand. That is very much with a voice that is very high.
Oh, it's so bad.
And
I don't know if she made that choice, but whoever made it
deserves to be sacked.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so distracting through the whole movie too.
It's
like, I understand they were trying to make it like the sweet kind of sugar plummy kind of voice, but it was just so bad.
Yeah, it felt really... It felt out of place. Like, I get
because everyone else was talking too regularly for that not to stick out.
Yeah, like, especially, the other two keepers of the other 2 realms or whatever. Like, they were just talking normal. Like,
pretty much. They had a little bit of like a flair, but it wasn't dramatic enough to make hers.
It really made her stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and then the direction they went with her character when they had Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
They totally waste Helen Mirren in this movie. She could have been a fantastic villain, but instead they're like, we're going to give her 10 minutes of screen time and make Keira Knightley our super uninteresting villain in a twist that this movie really doesn't need because it doesn't do anything for the movie.
No, it doesn't. It just kind of makes it more confusing, if anything. Like, it's you're sitting there going... Wait, what?
Well, because her villain motivation is so paper thin.
Yeah.
Like, they try to use it as something that really doesn't even make sense in the story. Like, I kind of get the tie, but like, I don't, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's not a good movie.
It's not a good movie. There's so much in it that just doesn't make sense. Like, it feels like one of those movies where there's a lot happening, but none of it actually gets you anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a mess. Didn't work
it's
at
a mess
all for me, and I just was
Disney.
not into
Disney didn't need to release this movie. It should have been one that they just shelved and tried to redo in a couple of years. Like, just count their losses, and just cut their losses, shelve it, and if they really, really want to do it, give it a couple of years and try it again, because this did not do them any favors in any department. It didn't do anyone any favors that was involved in this movie.
No.
So I still to me, it's actually hilarious that Morgan Freeman is in this movie.
He's in like one scene. He's literally in one scene.
And once again, it like serves no real purpose for the movie.
It's a terrible film. If you haven't seen it, which I'm assuming you haven't,
please don't. But there's one good thing I will give this movie. One good thing. If I ever have enough money to have a giant house and have a giant Christmas party, that's how we're doing Christmas presents from now on.
Yes, that was pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie, that was a pretty amazing idea.
Thank you for that one.
Thank you very much for that.
All right. So this next movie is going to be a little bit divisive.
Oh,
because I enjoyed it and you didn't.
Yeah. Speaking of box office disasters.
Yeah. Perfect segue, right?
Yeah. Mortal Engines.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is, if for those of you who haven't heard, this is Peter Jackson's produced. He didn't direct this film. He produced it. It's based on a book. I went in with mediocre expectations. I thought I was kind of going, I just want to like it. That's all. Like,
that's kind of where I was too.
Yeah, I have no idea how this movie was funded.
Which we figured out, by the way.
Yeah,
there's one scene in the movie where we looked at it and we were like, that's how it got funded.
That's how it got funded. Okay, yeah, cool.
Like, it'll be super obvious if you guys see this movie what scene we're talking about, where it's a real quick flash and they like mention it very, like it's a throwaway sentence.
Yeah.
But you see it and you're like, that's where the money came from.
That's why it got funded. All right. Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. I was like, how did this? Oh, that's right. I remember that moment. Suffice to say, I did not enjoy this film.
No.
Primarily because I think this is my most heartbreaking film of 2018.
I think it was, yeah.
The reason because I have never seen a movie this year that has had such an incredible world built up that they have really molded and made incredibly well, and that I have fallen in love with the world, and then they have filled it with a boring character and a terribly dull plot. And that was the problem with the film, was that every time it would cut back to something about the world, the history about the world, how we got into this, this state of giant engines roaming around the planet, or how, the government system and how it all worked, all that sort of stuff I was fascinated by and I was really deeply into, and I was enjoying every minute of that. But every time it cut back to our main characters and focused on this rebellion plot and this love story and this a terrible villain in Hugo Weaving and just really bad dialogue and really bad plot, I was bored. And I thought, I was heartbroken because I could see it. I could see the movie that it could have been, and it was there. And just, I think with another couple of drafts, this could have been this could have started a new franchise. This could have been Peter Jackson's next big franchise that he produced, and this director could have been the next big director. But instead, we got a film that in 6 months no one's going to remember came out.
And I can agree with you. I don't think that it's going to have any sort of impact on anything enough for us to get a sequel. Even if it, let's say, because it is a box office disaster right now. But say that it had a cult following. It was actually good. People enjoyed it. I think it could have been a springboard for a new trilogy or a new saga or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to be, the people who do see it, I think it's going to be very split. It's going to be like myself and the couple that we went to see it with enjoyed the movie, and you did not. You just didn't have a good experience with it.
No.
And I enjoyed it. And I can acknowledge that it had a lot of potential that it didn't live up to. And it did have a lot of story issues, and the characters weren't that well fleshed out. And we didn't really know a ton about them, and they didn't really have a big impact emotionally as characters. But for some reason, I just had a really good time with the movie.
Yeah, it was the problem with the characters for me was I did not care at all about their story. And the story that was presented was very much a very basic plot that I have seen in Hunger Games, that I have seen in name a YA novel in the last decade. It was... We've seen this all before. I think this movie is about 10 years too late. If this movie came out about 10 years ago, in the height of the YA
Yeah.
renaissance, it
Yeah.
might have done better. But
And-
now we're
And I get that. I totally get where you're coming from. And I don't even disagree with you. But for some reason, I just had fun with this movie. And I just enjoyed the experience that I had. I'm not saying that, you know, by any means it did everything great. But it's just, I don't know, for some of those, it's just one of those movies that to me just, I just enjoyed it. And I know you have movies like that too.
Oh,
where,
yeah, definitely.
Where a lot
Yeah.
of people look at it and go, oh, like
Yeah.
there were all these problems. But
yeah, and then
sometimes you just enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I just kind of had that experience. I don't
No,
know.
and I can appreciate that, and I understand that. It was one for me that I couldn't get into,
Yeah.
and I was sitting there just heartbreaking the entire time, and just it kind of hurt.
Yeah, yeah, that happens
but-
sometimes.
Talking about one of the better films of the year,
Mhm.
Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Yes.
One of
Oh my gosh,
the best films of the year.
it's so well made.
It is. It
Oh my
is
gosh.
an incredibly well made film. I think Melissa McCarthy gives easily her best performance of the year.
Easily, this is I think the best I've ever seen her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
easily the best
So-
I've ever seen her. Having seen now most of the front runners for Best Actress,
Yes,
I am tempted to give it to her.
I think she's a lock to get nominated.
I think I think she'll get nominated, but
I don't know if she will. I think for me, it's her, Lady Gaga, and then possibly,
Olivia Colman.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think those are the three right now.
Yeah, they're the three, and then Glenn Close is the other one who's
Yeah.
for The Wife.
And I get that, but I just,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like those four though
Those four are the guaranteed.
are
locks,
the
I think.
guaranteed nominations.
Yeah.
But I definitely would not be upset by any means
No.
if her and or Richard E. Grant walk away with awards for this movie.
See, Richard E. Grant, I think right now could be considered a front runner, but we can talk about more of that when we do our Oscar chat.
Which we will. We'll have plenty of those coming.
definitely.
But it is worth mentioning that they both give performances in this movie that are very much worthy.
This is the best I've
that.
ever seen him.
Yes.
Easily. The
Yes.
best I've ever seen him.
Best I've ever seen her.
Best I've ever seen her.
Yeah.
It is a really quirky and sweet
Yeah.
and just unique film that I'm really, really glad I saw. Like I wasn't expecting to love this film as much as I did. And it's really well made. It's quick. Like
It
it's
is.
really
It's-
fast paced.
The pacing of it feels very nice. It feels
Yeah.
like I think it fits really well with the tone of the movie
Mm.
too, where the pacing and the tone just work together very,
Yeah,
very nicely.
There was never a moment where I was straight up bored. And I really liked these characters. Like I they're not good people.
No.
They're not nice
No,
people.
they're not.
But you were able to sympathize with them, and you were able to just to be on their side. And I liked that the film was managed to find a way where you would feel for these people who are not nice people.
Yeah. Well, and you can really see it. It really gives you a great view on what their perspective is. It really shows you, especially Lee Israel,
Yeah.
Melissa McCarthy's character. You really see what she's going through and how she sees the world, and really like it just gives you a great view of why she is the way
Yeah,
she is,
definitely.
and how she deals with other people.
Mm.
And I just think it does a great job of showing us her story in a way that's very accessible.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed basically every moment of this
Yeah,
film. I think this is easily one of the best films of the year. I really think all of you guys need to go check it out. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's still playing in some theaters somewhere.
And if it's not, and you can rent it or you can buy it, it's completely worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. I think this is easily one of the more original films you'll see this year.
And more, it's very much stands out on its own.
Yeah.
In terms of even like the tone and the, just the subject matter and the way that the characters are treated. It very much is its own lane right now, which I think is actually kind of important.
Yeah.
This season, like for awards and even for people who might just be fatigued with
Yeah.
movies in general, with trying to catch up right now or whatever it is. I think this is a great palate cleanser,
Yeah, definitely.
which we needed.
Yeah,
when we
kind
saw
of
it.
did when we saw it. We hadn't seen a good movie in a while, and it was kind of one of those like just breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
That, oh, okay, this is like, it reminded me, this is why I go to the movies.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I was really
because
happy we went to see it.
Because you get a movie like this that, look, not everyone's going to see it. It's not a big movie.
No.
But it's one that you can tell people about.
I only honestly really knew about this movie, really, because like I'd heard you mention it, but I had heard Perry Nemiroff talk about how she enjoyed it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those movies that I think a lot of people are going to see unless there's someone they know that is like, hey, go see this movie.
Yeah,
so go see this movie.
Yeah, go see this movie. It's definitely worth it. And it's a great film.
It's
a
really
great film. I think we should end it on arguably one of the bigger films of the year.
Okay.
Shockingly, this movie is on track to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
Which, if you had told me back in 2012, hey, in 6 films into the DC EU franchise,
the world of DC,
where they're going to copy Marvel and start doing their own cinematic universe. And they're going to have a Batman vs. Superman movie and a Justice League film. And the first one that is going to make $1 billion at the box office is an AQUAMAN movie.
Which to me is incredible. Like, that makes me so happy.
It's so happy.
Like to me, that is the best possible thing ever. Yeah. Just because as much as I love Batman and I love Superman and I love the idea of having a Justice League movie, the fact that it is a super badass version of Aquaman makes me so happy.
But more that if you told me that
No, I wouldn't believe you. I wouldn't take that bet.
Well, if you had told me and said, I'll bet you $1,000 that it will happen, you would have given me $1,000 and you saying that, you know, oh, that's never going to happen in a million years.
Yeah, I'd be like, no way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not going to happen.
And I'd be $1,000 short because it's looking like it's going to make $1 billion. And we had very differing opinions about this.
We did.
We both enjoyed it. Like we're both in the
positives.
Yeah, like we both give it fresh.
Yeah.
I would more lean towards a slight fresh. I thought it was a good movie. I didn't think it was a great movie, and I don't think this is anywhere near Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman is a lot better.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think the first two, as bad as the third act is in Wonder Woman, I think the first 2 acts are so strong.
I think this is a strong movie. I think you're crazy.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think this is a good, entertaining movie that has some major flaws that I can look past. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I did really enjoy this film. I just didn't love it as much as I wanted to.
I don't understand that at all. I just don't. I don't get what movie you came out of seeing. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think I thought it was a little too long.
Oh no, it's perfect.
I think it's a little too long. Perfect. There are some characters in that movie that I would just cut completely. I don't think we needed Black Manta.
That is the only one I agree with you on cutting.
Yeah, Black Manta.
That is the only one.
It was not needed in this film. I think the opening sequence could have been cut down very easily. I don't think you needed to have it as long and as like just. I think there is a very tight, well-made 2-hour film in this 2.5-hour film. I think that you could get this movie down to 2 hours and it would be very tight, very fast-paced, and very, very good. I just think it's a little overcooked.
I don't think so. I think it's great. I freaking adore this movie. I walked out. I was so happy. Yeah. Like, I'd heard so many criticisms about it, and some I can understand. A lot I don't. I thought the characters were great. I do, like I said, I will give you that one character that I think they could have lived without, but I don't think it hurt the movie personally. I think it's a great way for them to set up another movie going forward, having that there. I think that there was a lot of heart in this movie that I really appreciated a lot. I think Jason Momoa was great.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved Atlantis. I thought Atlantis was so beautifully done in this movie.
Definitely give you that one. I think Atlantis was absolutely gorgeous. And I did, when they go to Atlantis that first time and you actually see Atlantis for the first time, I was captivated and in awe. I really loved that.
Yeah. I thought they handled speaking underwater well. To me, it wasn't distracting.
No, it wasn't at all.
I thought that it was really, really nicely done because, you know, it's them just talking, but it has that little bit of distortion where you're like, okay, that makes sense. So I thought that was great. I think that I know you had a problem with how the costume reveal happened because
I have an issue because in the trailer spoils the reveal of the costume. And in the movie, that is such a well-earned moment.
Yeah, they really make you he has to earn that moment.
And I'm a little disappointed that moment got spoiled for a lot of people.
Yeah, with the trailer.
In a trailer.
Yeah, I get that.
And I get that. And to me, it lost a little bit of the impact. Because
and I understand that. DC does have a track record of doing that. Yeah. If you look at, you know, a little film called BVS.
Yeah.
They just kind of have a track record of doing that. And I understand that. But I was really, really glad that they did make the movie earn it, though. That you didn't just get that straight away.
Definitely, yeah.
And also the scene where he actually has to go to get it is...
I thought it was really good.
Really well done.
It is.
Really
and
well done.
I think that is all really, really well done and creative and imaginative. And I thought that was all entertaining and enjoyable. I think I didn't like Orm as a villain. I thought he was a little bland and a little too... I didn't believe his motivations that much. His motivation if I just want to destroy the surface world. It rang a little hollow for me. I didn't quite see the build up to
it. I get that. We didn't really get to spend a ton of time with Orm. So I understand that. I think that it's a nice angle for them to take just because, you know, it does make sense for, you know, because he doesn't want anything to do with Atlantis.
Yeah.
You know, Arthur doesn't want to go there, doesn't want anything to do with it. And I think it's a nice way for them to kind of link him having to go there. But I do think that if they would have cut Manta out, we would have been able to spend a little more time with Orm, maybe.
I think they needed to find a way to make Orm a little more, give his motivations a bit more backstory. And actually, like, especially, and like, considering where they take Orm in this film.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like either we could have spent, you know, they could either have done Orm in another film, which I don't know how you do, but I just would have liked to have spent more time with him.
And I get
really
that.
Like feel his like to really feel his anger towards his brother, because I never ever once felt it. It always rang hollow for me. His anger towards his brother. It just always felt hanging. And maybe that's because, you know, it telegraphs a certain twist within the first 10 minutes of the film. And maybe that's why it rang hollow for me. Because
I didn't feel that strongly about that. Like, I think... Yeah, they could have developed him a little more. We could have spent a little more time with him. But to me, it wasn't as extreme as how you feel about it. But what I do want to say, kind of before we wrap up talking about this one, is I think that it was great for them to give James Wan this movie and let him do what he was going to do with it. We had a conversation about this a while ago before we saw Aquaman of... you know, just kind of the direction that the world of DC is going and hopefully needs to go, where this movie pretty much completely disregards Justice League.
Yeah, basically.
And I think moving forward, they kind of just need to do that. They need to, you know, make their standalone movies and just make them as if everything else, you know, Justice League, BVS, that kind of stuff hasn't happened.
I thought how they handled Justice League in this movie was good.
I did too.
They acknowledge it. It's they do. Mera actually mentions it. She says when you did this and then that's it.
And
that's
then
that's
it. They don't try to severely course correct.
No.
They don't try to make excuses for differences or anything like that. And I think that's a smart way for them to go going forward.
If that's how, I mean, Wonder Woman 2, Wonder Woman 1984 is not going to have to deal with that problem.
Right.
But if that's how that DC go forward with these films, I'm glad.
I am too. I don't think at this point, I think it would be a big mistake at this point for them to try and Flashpoint things, for them to make Flash's movie Flashpoint. I do because I think that'll just be overwhelming and confusing for a lot of people.
To me, DC haven't earned the trust.
Okay, well, we know that. I'm running on the assumption that they don't deserve it, but I also think it just makes things confusing, especially for people who aren't like us, who are super in this world all the time and know about everything going on. I think it could be confusing. I think that they don't need to do it. I think that if they, because we talked about how Marvel had their movies where they stumbled and they just kept going. They didn't try to,
And just to, because I can already see some of the people saying that, oh, how come Into the Spider-Verse isn't confusing, but this one would be. DC haven't shown me that they can't, that they're able to tell a very complex story.
No.
And that they're able to do that simply.
No.
I've not yet seen DC do that. I will, and go back and, I wasn't recording anything when these trailers dropped, but for months I've been saying I was worried about Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
I was worried about how they would do the storyline, and Sony have shown me in this one film that
we can trust them to do that.
Yeah, that we can trust them to do that.
And until they mess it up, if they make another, let's say they make another Spider-Verse movie and it's just garbage.
Yeah. All right. But also, if you're going to, if the funny part about all this, if you're going to do a Flashpoint movie, you get the two people who were originally meant to do it, who left to go do Solo and then do Spider-Verse.
Yeah. So, I know.
I mean, maybe if they announce Chris Miller and Phil Lord doing this movie tomorrow and it is Flashpoint, I might be a little optimistic. I might be a little.
If that was the announcement, I would be like, I will actually consider this idea now. Yeah. Because right now, if you announced it with any other directors or any other, I would be like, you know what? I don't think you've earned that, and I don't think we want that.
Yeah, and I don't know how that would work. But
yeah.
All right.
So I think we do have more movies to talk about, but I think we're going to cut it there for now. I think this
is already nearly an hour long. So.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Have you seen any of these movies? If you have, what do you think of them? We'd really love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, guys, let us know below. Am I completely wrong about Mortal Engines? Should I fall in love with Aquaman more? Did you love the Nutcracker?
If you did, please tell us how and why so that we can try and
understand.
Yeah, because it was
not an easy movie.
So please let us know how you achieved that. If we are wrong about that. We do have all of our links down in the description, as we always do. If you want to find us on social media, if you want to check out our Letterboxd accounts to see how we've rated movies, we're going to put it down there as well. Thank you guys so much for all of your support, especially now that we're switching things up a bit, trying to work with some technical difficulties, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for all of your support, and we will see you all next time.